Hello again and welcome back to another video about antinatalism and pessimism overall. There is this counter-argument against antinatalism that says that most of people are happy to be alive. Although that would count actually as argumentum ad populum, the majority saying something doesn't make it actually true, okay? But there is some other hidden problem in this line of reasoning. If we say, for example, that most people are happy to be alive, they presume unintentionally a comparative relationship between a state of not existing, not a state of not existing, but a state of never beginning to exist with a state of existence. We need to be careful with terminology over here. So when somebody says that he is happy to be alive, although we all actually know that the guy is simply expressing his optimistic perspective about life, but it cannot be counted as evidence against pessimism. It's the case that life is suffering. It doesn't worth starting at all. So when you're actually arguing for your case that I don't want to have children because the world is simply horrible and life entails suffering that I don't want to impose on my children without having their consent, somebody says that, well, most of people are actually happy to be alive. I am happy to be alive. But he presumes, as I said, he presumes a comparative relationship with a state of never beginning to exist with a state of existing, as in the here and now, living. So when they say that I am happy to be alive, I could only respond that, were you miserable when you were not alive? How does that work? I mean, once you start developing consciousness and you can recognize that you are alive, you say, woof, god damn, it was such a drag to not be alive. What are you talking about? This doesn't follow, it's a non sequitur. The comparative hidden value of the statement I am happy to be alive is wrong, because a state of never beginning to exist cannot be sensitive to any quality, to any value about pain or pleasure. We can only be sensitive to those things once we start being alive. It cannot be the case that you are happy to be alive because it can't be otherwise. You were not suffering in a state of never beginning to exist. There is this hidden comparative value underneath this argument is simply wrong. Like, oh my god, I'm such a happy person now that I'm alive. Not being alive was such a pain in the ass. This is illogical. Plus, it's actually argument from feelings. Your feelings cannot be accounted to an objective reality about the thing itself. It could be only accounted from valid argument, a correct line of reasoning. What if you are happy to be alive and somebody else is not happy to be alive, not happy to have started to exist? Who is true? Who is correct? Subjective experience can never be accounted to describe an objective description about reality. Plus, when you start in life, you get only to be happy in life, to make your life be better, to take an optimistic point of view about reality. Not that it is the case, not that the case is actually making you be optimistic out of necessity because reality is all sunshine and rainbows, but you need to be optimistic pragmatically to make your life easier and opt to maximize your pleasure across time. We know that life entails aging, illness, and death. My unborn child would simply avoid all of that, but you would say he would also be deprived of all the pleasures in there. How could he be deprived if he doesn't exist? Now you would also say that the agent who would avoid all the suffering in life doesn't also exist, so what are you talking about? So this is actually where your moral compass actually works. You know that life entails suffering and entails also pleasure, and you know that suffering outweighs pleasure because the maximum amount of pain simply doesn't worth the maximum amount of pleasure. But anyway, you perceive that there is suffering and there is pleasure in life. And you also, by a logical calculation, you reach the conclusion that the pleasure simply doesn't worth the suffering. So you take a decision, a moral decision, to not bring your children to existence, because they would simply not be deprived of any pleasure since they do not exist, but it would be better to avoid any type of suffering once they start to exist. This is exactly the central argument that antinatalists have. People who say that they are happy to be alive make a grand mistake into just because I feel this way, it gives me a reason to think that other people also feel the same, and other people, once they start existing, they will feel also the same. This seems like the problem of induction. We cannot conclude that my subjective experience would be extended to other people. We cannot conclude that just because I feel this way, you would also feel the same. Plus, in reasoning and making descriptive statements about the objective reality, it's not plausible to take the argument of the majority, because the majority is not equipped to make logical deductions. The majority is not equipped to reach rational conclusions. This is exactly like the argument of Socrates that democracy is not useful because it makes fools be able to vote. And since the majority are fools, presumably, it makes fools like them be in power and be in charge. But anyway, I just thought of making this short video about this particular point. If you are interested in the philosophy of antinatalism, you could visit, of course, my antinatalism playlist. And thanks again for watching, and see you in the next one.